Hey everybody. Microphone up. Hey. Okay, so today we are going to take a look at some projects by QBRD, who's done a bunch of really interesting stuff with algorithmic randomness, generative music ideas. And we're going to take a look, go deep with them today, and hopefully appreciate a few minutes thinking about something else before we go back out into the streets, which I hope we are all doing today. Cool. So I'm downloading his latest versions right now. So give me just a couple of moments. I didn't realize these needed to update. Okay, here's the first one. It's called Traipsing Environs. So, QBRD, why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself however you want to share, and tell us a little bit about, I don't know, just set this up for us today. Yeah, this is a really cool constraint. This is a piece that has no instruments at all. There's no source sound other than audio effects. Got it, resamples. Okay, so this is it. So I'm gonna turn on the rack and press play. Cool, so there's no clip here, so clips are material that go in the clip slots. I'm gonna turn this off, and let's go through one at a time and see what's happening here. So here we've got this bells layer. So a couple of effects have noise generators in them, and that's what he's using to create the source sound. So let's see. Noise. Maybe this is just delaying, echoing forever, beat repeating. Okay, so the source here is the noise property of this echo. So this just generates a little bit of noise. And let's just think through what he's doing here. I'm gonna deactivate all of these and reactivate them one by one. Whoa. Okay, so start with just the noise, and we can see that we have some level here even if we can't quite hear it. So this is noise. This is kind of noise with tons of feedback. So when you have an echo, you can set the feedback to more than 100%, and you'll, rather than each repetition of the echo decaying, each echo is louder than the previous time. So we get this buildup of feedback here. There's wobble that's adding basically the character of the unsteadiness of an old tape machine. And that's the source. Very ingenious. Okay, then there's an echo. That is... the most salient thing, I think, is that it's boosting the output by 12 dB. Yeah, I don't think either. So ducking on the echo is going to make the echoes softer. It's kind of like a sidechain built in. It makes the echoes softer when the dry signal is louder. But since we don't have a dry signal, I think it is moot here. D should be active. I'm not quite sure what you mean by D. Okay, so echo, the second echo is cranking the input and the output. So we're just getting a bunch more volume. There's also a filter going on. D. Got it. So he's using here boiling soup, yeah. He's using here the second echo as a kind of analog distortion device. We've got a filter, we've got cranking of the input and the output, so that, yeah, it's distorting for an authentic hardware feel, it says. Next up, utility to bring the volume back down. So this layer creates distortion, and now utility brings it back down to a good bass layer. Okay, I'm going to pull the volume back up so we can hear it. Flanger. So we've got this burbling soup sound. Flanger puts it in stereo and gives it motion with an LFO. So a flanger does some kind of phase cancellation modulation situation. Okay, so yeah, we've got now stereo experience and motion. Corpus. This is just a great tour of effects. How do I make Ableton not crash? I don't know. It mostly doesn't crash for me. It's probably I don't know, VSTs. When it's crashing for me, it's because I'm using VSTs that are crashing. Okay, corpus is a physical modeling device. So physical modeling uses mathematical models to model physical objects that are used for resonance. So a marimba, these are all our basic like physical objects that you can have. You can have metal ones, tubes, plates, membranes, like for a drum. And so it models a piece of wood. A marimba is just like a piece of wood of a certain size and shape, and the size and shape give it a particular pitch. So corpus is a way to feed any signal into a resonating object, and it can add tone. It's great on drums. It's cool on anything. It's one of the more dramatic transformations. Here, it's resonating at a certain frequency that is set here by tune. And now we've got more resonators, which take a fundamental note and add a chord kind of subtly in the background. There it is loud. I don't know, Ableton doesn't really crash for me. Except when I put an Arturia plugin of the type VST on a track, and then I delete that track, or try to get rid of that plugin. Then it crashes. So I use Audio Unit's versions of the Arturia plugins. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. So AutoPan, this is... Normally, it's for like panning something back and forth, but if you set the phase so that the blue and the yellow lines are overlapping, then it's modulating the overall volume. So we're getting this kind of intermittent rhythmic shape of a saw wave. Are you talking about my piece, Bloom? Actually, my Bloom piece is like 30 pieces, and it's all I'm writing about right now, because it's my dissertation. Cool, so here's an audio effect rack. Wow, there is a whole lot going on here. So he's made different layers. Let's just listen to one here. Bassish. Okay, so we're getting this sound with an echo filtered really low. And then there's a beat repeat that is... Oh, like the E note. Yeah, that's an unfortunate coincidence, is that my algorithmic generative music project of my last decade is also called Bloom. Aha, transport needs to be running for beat repeat. Thank you. Okay, great. So now we're taking this thing and doing, with pitch decay down, we're getting these pitch bends. Beautiful. Okay, and then, but then there's multiple layers happening here. So here's another where we're filtered slightly differently, and we've got a beat repeat also set a little differently. Chords-ish. Nice. Wow, a couple of beat repeats here. So these delays are kind of just like amplifying and keeping the sound going. And then these beat repeats are creating these interjections. Notice how he's put it in insert mode. We learned about this on Thursday. Insert mode means it's going to replace the input sound with the beat repeat output when it kicks in. So he's got chance set to 50, so we have some irregular, intermittent pitch decay happening. And then here's just one more with a delay echoing. And then there's a delay on the end, so let's put all these back in together. And that's our first chain. So let's do a tour of one or two of these others, but then we're going to look at a couple of other projects of his. So here, we'll do the same thing. Let's just go one effect at a time. Okay, so it starts this violinish layer. Starts with vinyl distortion. I'm not sure what's doing the LFO here. Maybe you could explain that, QBRD. Is something else on? Oh, Autopan is still on. Okay, great. So we've got amp. So vinyl distortion also can be a noise generator. It's a stock effect that you have that just makes things sound a little more like they're on a record player. And then amp models like a guitar amplifier, which adds distortion. Flanger, similar to last time, creates some motion in the sound and some stereo variation. This corpus is modeling a metal pipe. And it has an LFO on it, so we're getting some subtle sine wave. Well, it's not that subtle, but the whole sound is kind of quiet here. Here we go. This is adding a rhythm, so the LFO is operating on how much the sound is resonating the pipe. Autopan, chopping it up into a rhythm. And then it looks like we have a copy of the same audio effects chain, perhaps, where we have a kind of straight ahead one that's just an echo, one that is doing, the double beat repeat. This is the same as the last one. Cool, beat repeat interjections with the pitch bend. Bassish. We're filtering for low frequencies and adding some beat repeat, pitch decay interjections. And now some real low frequencies here. And then all of these go through the resonator with the wet turned up really high. So we're getting lots of these resonated pitches, which is what's getting us this the kind of string sound that we've got, a kind of noisy but focused pitch. Beat repeat, providing occasional stutters. Now autopan to give it some motion in the stereo field. Great. So that's the violinish texture. Here's another texture. Let's see, I see a similar chain on the back end. But we've got a couple of OTTs, which are a multiband compression preset, which bring out the highs of sounds. They're what's giving this kind of like hollow middle, bright, high sound. A bunch of those here, each operating in small-ish amounts. And now we've got a layer that starts again with the noise of the echo device, adds more noise with saturator, more. Okay, so now we've got this echo with the input up and the output all the way up, like we saw before, giving analog distortion. Utility, this is turned down to make up for the huge boost in volume given by this. Vocoder is let's just listen and hear the difference. D should be active again here on these guys. Cool. Yeah, vocoder. I'm not quite prepared in my day-to-day to explain how vocoder works. But you kind of pump one sound through a frequency spectrum of another sound, and you can modulate one sound with another. Cool, and then we've got a couple of effects chains here. So whenever you have multiple effects chains in an effects rack, and they're all turned up, and they're all on here, and their chain is such that this line, this blue line, lines up with all of them to select them all, then they're all going to run in parallel. So we hear each of these layers as all mixed together. So pitch hack is a max device for transposing the pitch of things. So that's how we're getting the notes high like this. Beat repeats with the gate mode on are what's making it silent most of the time, and then occasionally, with chance here, making these interjections. So if we had mix, we'd hear the sounds all the time with the beat repeat mixed in, but gate is only going to give us the sound whenever the beat repeat's engaged, which is a matter of this chance function. So this is how he's adding his little details here. And let's listen to this last change. We've got an LFO attached to noise morph. Maybe you could help me out, QBRD, and tell me on what parameter is noise morph. Okay, so we've got echo creating noise, resonating a beam with corpus to give it some pitch, modulating in random amounts. This is the random waveform. There's actually two kinds. Oh shoot, I shouldn't have. I messed this up. I didn't realize I was mapping, but yeah. There are two noise functions. One is moves step to step in leaps, and the other one moves steps to step in smooth curves and lines. Okay, so this was mapped to, morph. Noise morph, great. So, corpus is making it resonate through a beam, resonator is adding more resonance in this chord, reverb is bringing out, making it ring a space. So, lots of these are resonators. If you've got a source sound that's noise, to give it pitch, and to give it body, to amplify it, you can put it through different kinds of resonators. Corpus is a resonator, resonators is a resonator, reverb is a resonator that's modeling a space, a room. In fact, pretty much any sound that you hear, any instrument is designed in this way, where there's an initial noise source that gets resonated through something. So the initial noise on a guitar or any plucked string instrument is the strike of the pick or the finger on the string, and then the string itself is the resonator, and then there's a second resonator, which is the body of the instrument. On a brass instrument, the initial source is the buzzing of the lips, and then there's a resonator, which is the body of the instrument that gives it pitch based on the length of the tube. So this is really modeling, this is a kind of a paradigm that we should all be thinking about as we're making sounds, is that you can kind of create a synthetic instrument by using an initial noise source, either something short and sharp, like the strike of a hammer on a string, or something continuous, like this stream of noise. And then I guess something continuous, that would be like a bowing. It gives you continuous noise that then gets resonated through things that resonate. Again, corpus, resonators, reverb are all devices that let you do this in Ableton. Cool. So I know this is a quick overview, but there are a couple of other projects that I want us to take a look at. So I'm just going to keep on trucking. I'm seeing some conversation in here about Macs and stuff, and I just want to weigh in briefly. I don't really use Macs. I got really into it for a year in college and got really good at it and worked, spent tons of time in it, and then stopped and haven't really looked at it again since then. In grad school, I fell in love with a different music computer programming language called SuperCollider. And it's something, I come from more of a regular programming background, but so I wanted to work in something that was more like plain text like this rather than Max, which is very object, it's very visual, but doesn't really look like a programming language. I don't know. I can recommend both. This SuperCollider has a pretty steep learning curve. I love it. I've been spending like many hours a day for the last couple of weeks working on some projects in SuperCollider. But it's great for you can code your own synths. You can code your own like interactive systems. I wrote a program this month to basically turn this OSC device into a MIDI instrument that does lots of things that I invented. It's a kind of custom touch controller called a Manta. So you can invent your own musical systems, you can write patterns for algorithmic music, you can drive MIDI, you can code synthesizers. It's really a great space if you aren't intimidated by coding language. But Max is a bit more approachable, and you can do anything in Max. And the benefit of Max is that you can make devices that you can bring in to Ableton as Max for Live devices. So if you do have Max for Live, but you're intimidated by learning how to code your own stuff, you can also, there are tons of free things for algorithmic music of the Max MIDI effect type. I don't know, you can just go online and search for Max for Live devices, and there's all kinds of cool algorithmic music stuff that you can play with. Jitter, I used Jitter to make a Conway's Game of Life project back in college that turned that into a synthesizer. Sonic Pi, people love Sonic Pi for coding music. If you're into all this stuff, I encourage you to do it. There's lots of like awesome intellectual challenges for you. I don't know. I find programming, kind of like composing, it's a way to make music connect with more parts of me. Like if music was just something for my hands and ears to do, like that could be great and probably could keep my interest my whole life, but it's really important to me that music is something that my hands and ears and brain at its highest, high octane, high functioning, like biggest brain challenge level can also engage with. And so composing is that programming is absolutely that. And the feeling of laser brain that you get from learning to code, which is really like learning to think clearly and express your ideas clearly. As you get good at it, you get what feels like having laser brain to me, where I just feel really like sharp and bright and intellectually alive with music. And that's an experience with music that I love and is really important to me, that I don't really get like practicing guitar, although I probably could if I were better at practicing. Okay, sorry, digression, something I am passionate about, all of this stuff. And it's on the front of my mind because, as I said, I'm working on my dissertation right now, and it is all that. Okay, cool. So, next up, Solipsistic Dust, also another project by QBRD. If you want to tell us anything about this, feel free to type it. I'm just going to hit play. I forget. Oh yeah, play me. This is so fun. Watch this. So this is an area that I really wanted to talk about on Tuesday but ran out of time, and this is follow actions. So this is another whole area. So much fun. I could listen to this for a long time. Okay, so let's talk about follow actions. So on Tuesday we talked about randomness with MIDI notes, but you can also do randomness on the clip level, and that's with follow actions. So check this out. On every clip, there's the launch modes. They are shown in hide with this L in the circle. You open up the L and you get the launch modes. And these control different ways that the play button works, basically. But down here, take a look at follow action. So follow action, you have to learn to read, and it reads like this. Follow action. This is time. So 1 bar. After 1 bar, 0 beats, and 0/16 notes, then go to the next clip 100% of the time. So I play this clip, and after 1 bar, it's going to go to the next clip, and actually all of these clips, let's see. Now this last one. Okay, so all of these except for the last one, I'll have the follow action to go after 1 bar, 0 beats, and 0/16 notes to the next clip 100% of the time. This last one, it's the same. And so next is a rapping forward motion, and it's important that all of these are contiguous. If this was down here, they're all selected. If this was down here, then this is going to wrap to here and not to here. So these are follow actions that are kind of constrained to contiguous clips. So there are a bunch of different follow actions. If I select all of these and select instead of next, I can say any. And now it'll jump to a random clip. And now let's take a look at this second column. So there's two possibilities for each follow action. Here we can say after 1 bar, 0 beats, 0 16th notes, we can go to any clip, or we can go to the first clip. And then this is the ratio of how often these two things happen. So if I say 1-to-1, then they are equally likely to happen. And look at the results. We're going to jump to some random one often, but we're also going to jump to the first one. Yeah, let's take a look at this bass part. So these basses go to any other clip. So they're going to go to random ones, but they can't go to themselves. So any means a clip could play itself again. Other means no clip will repeat itself. It's always going to go to some other clip after this much time, 4 bars. Thanks for coming by, Pat. Cool, so we can see when we play this that all of these layers are working the same way. And this just then becomes a project of curation. What are your loops? How often do they play? Nice. So I just want to show you what the next step of a process might be. Aha, so there's already some recorded here. I'm going to delete this for the moment. And check this out. If I record from here to here, then you can return to this arrangement with the orange button and edit what you've done. So, you know, it's going to be random the first time, but you could use that as a way to create a big texture with lots of variation in it, and then go in and edit and make it the way that you want it. A fun tiny project that I recommend you do to play around with this is to just take one track. I'm going to go into my samples and grab like a bajillion samples. And drag them. I've taken too big a bite. Okay, and now drag them all onto one track. Gabriella, while this is loading, I'll answer your question. How would I approach building form in only session view? I would just do top to bottom. Time at the beginning to the end. mapped top to bottom in scenes, and simultaneous clips that you want to have happen together. Put them in horizontal scenes, but having something that progresses through things in session view at the right times to like be able to hit play in session view and do a whole song with a bunch of different form changes and do it automatically. I mean, you could do it with follow actions. You can make any clip move to the next clip after a certain number of bars. But that feels like tons of headaches to me. To try to figure out how many bars on each clip. It's just not apparent when things are going to move. You can't see it all. So I don't know. I'd suggest doing your arranging and form in arrangement view. And then if you want to bring it over for live performance, you can always select a chunk of time and say create, capture and insert scene, or consolidate time to new scene, both of which are going to take what you have and create a scene that's exactly that amount of time. And if it needs to like make silence at the beginning or something on one track to make things line up, it will. Okay, so I've just taken all of these random 2,000, almost 3,000 random samples. And I've selected them all, and I've made follow actions on them be after one beat, play any clip. Actually, not even after one beat, after half a beat. So if we had more time, this would be the assignment I would make for you. We would take this, record, and then practice editing. Make a 4-bar loop, loop it, and cut and move things around until you like and get to know some groove. So I recommend you do that. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. This one is called Let's Run Away. Breakbeat flamingos, something like this. Let's run away to breakcore and swim with flamingos. I love that you do this. Okay, all sounds are generated from a single C1 note. I don't have some of your samples. We'll see what happens. All sounds are generated from a single C1 note sustained over a bar. 4 different break samples are chopped up and destroyed. 46 kicks that can be triggered at any time. And bass chords and pads are played with a combination of random and scale effects. What's going on? I'm going to quit Ableton for a second and see if I can... I think I freaked it out by dragging in 3,000 samples a minute ago, and it feels a little sticky. Okay, so check it out. The source here is just one C1 note. So this is kind of like our project that we did last week on Tuesday, where we took notes. Let's try to break this down. Super ingenious. Ooh. Okay. So we got all these beat repeats. We'll work backwards for a moment. We have all these beat repeats adding different interjections of variations. So I'm going to switch all these to gate so we just hear what's coming out of the beat repeats. What have I done? This is live. There's no... there is a track recorded of resamples, but it's muted. We're not hearing it. Okay, so... all right. So these beat repeats are adding variation. I'm just going to group these for a moment, selecting them all, Command-G to group them into an audio effects rack, and turn them off for the moment. Okay. So yeah, just one note is creating all of this. Let me see the best way to break this down for you. Okay, so first, it's picking random notes between the bass note that it's coming in and plus between 1 and 6 whenever chance happens. Next, we're randomizing the velocity. And next, we've got a chain that is just transforming. Let's see, these are all different arpeggiators. I'm going to take off. It's just a little complicated to hear things one bit at a time. But so basically, this is randomizing velocity. And on this effects rack, he's made a whole bunch of different MIDI effects chains that have different arpeggiators on them with different speeds. And actually not to different speeds, but maybe different patterns. Or maybe different transpositions. I'm not looking at it correctly. But so velocity, there are lots of different ways in a rack, and we'll talk about this more when we do racks class. But right now he's divided the whole velocity range into these different chains. So this chain is going to get sent the note whenever the velocity that's coming in, which is randomized, is below like 21 or whatever. 21. And then this one gets activated whenever the velocity is in this range, and this one's activated whenever the velocity is in this range. Steps. Okay, so these are arpeggiating all in eighth notes, but with different steps and distance. So they're arpeggiating basically different chords. This is adding notes for it to arpeggiate through. So it's going to transpose up a semitone and then up a semitone again, 2 steps, when this one is activated. So we're holding a note, but then depending on the velocity of that note, it's getting sent to one of these arpeggiators, which is cycling it through different pitches in eighth notes. Then that note is randomly modified again, so we're just adding a little bit more random possibility. Then the velocity is randomized again. And then we're getting, let's see, this is an instrument rack that has all of our different instrument layers in it. And it's divided up in the same way with velocities set for particular ranges. So we can see that the notes here are coming in with random velocities. And when they are in this range, yeah, good idea. Okay, so now we're hearing all of them. All of the notes are going through this. And what's happening in this case? Velocity is getting randomized. And now we've got a simpler, just set into slice mode for most of these. But then we've got a couple more variations where that simpler is warped in different ways, or reversed or arpeggiated. So most of the time it just goes through the normal sliced simpler of this drum break. But occasionally when the random values pop us over here, then we get these other chains that have different simpler settings and different effects perhaps after them. So that's how we're getting these kind of like interjections of stutters and reverses. So clever. Okay, so that's the drum layer. Boy, I cannot tell you how perfect these projects are for demonstrating in like a really masterful way all the things that we've been talking about this week. So kudos to QBRD. Thank you so much for sharing these projects. Same idea here. We've got a drum that's kind of a snare drum in a bunch of different chains. Corpus, chorus. I can tell when we're hearing the corpus one because it's giving us this tone. It's resonating a marimba bar. So lots of different variations on the sound getting randomly chosen by velocity. This drum same idea, lots of different variations of chains on this one drum simpler. Same thing, just with a different drum sample. This one, okay, this is clever. Scale with all of the notes in a row is going to convert all notes to the note C. And so we've got all the notes C, randomized velocities, giving us the variation here in all of these different kick drums that are all parsed out to different parts of the velocity range. So again, we're randomizing the velocity of the note, not to change the volume of the pitch, but to send it to different chains using this velocity chain selector. Bass, chords. Nice. So here he's made it so the chords only appear occasionally by randomizing velocity and then making a small area of velocities go to the chain. And all of the ones that are missing this target, we don't hear. And then it gets transposed, pitch gets randomized, a chord gets added, and then we go to a synth. let's hear all these layers together. And then let's put back on this giant beat repeat complex. And now we get all of these cool glitchy fills. I love this. Welcome Bassnug. I teach Ableton classes 3 times a week. We're about to finish up our Saturday class, which is a studio class with one of our students, QBRD, who has done a ton of cool work with randomness. This whole week has been about randomness, and we might continue to do more next week. Let me think about it. I'm still planning ahead next week. But Tuesdays are more creative classes, Thursdays are more technical classes, and on Saturdays we look at a project by a student in the class and see what we can learn from it. So if you're new here, you can follow this channel by hitting the heart button above. I do this all on a donation basis only. If this is useful for you, drop a couple bucks in the hat. I really appreciate it. Also help spread the word. It's really great having new people come. So I am going to move on today. Sorry we didn't get to the last project, QBRD. There's one more called Break Chops. Let's do a listen to it, and maybe I'll get carried away and say a few more things. But I'm a little worn out today and need to get back. Yeah, good question, Posh Potty. So, QBRD, this is a question I have too. When you're randomizing the velocities, how are you then getting consistent velocities on the output? I see that the velocities are sending us to different chains, but then does the velocity also get passed to the following instrument? I just am not hearing huge variations in velocity. Maybe I'm missing them. But are you then flattening out to get us consistent velocities after that, perhaps? Okay, let's take a look at this. Cool, that's what I was curious about. So if on the simpler you turn volume down to 0%, or velocity down, not volume I think, but velocity on the simpler. Yeah, if you turn vel to vol down, then the velocity has no effect on volume, and you get a consistent velocity regardless of whatever velocity goes in. So that is the answer to that. Okay, and here, let's just take a listen, and we'll take a look, and you can use your brain and the things that you've learned about today to see if you can understand what's going on here. Okay, so Amen Rack is only happening half the time. Velocity randomized again to send it through a bunch of different chains. Each of these chains is a different arpeggiator. I see, with different steps and distances. Velocity randomized again to determine which of the versions of the simpler it's going to use. Like this one has a wacky pitch envelope, which sounds like this. So here this is giving us lots of different versions of chopped up breaks and randomly moving through them. So that's the break layer. This is giving us more. Telephone's the name of the break. Telephone Girl, just like Amen is the name of the song it came from. Cool. He's letting it be a little flammy by not having the markers start necessarily exactly in the right places on the drums, just to give a little rhythmic thickness. And now we've got this kind of bass synthy instrument with the operator and echo for noise. Ooh, here I think we're hearing the ducking. Nope, never mind. Cool. Thank you again so much, QBRD. Sorry we didn't have time to go more deeply into all of them, but I think that we've covered all of the concepts represented here. So, yeah, thanks everybody. I'm going to think ahead. I may be revising what we're doing next week. I'll send out an email Monday. If you're not on the email list, you can sign up below. There's a link to my webpage for this class. Thanks to everybody for coming. I hope everybody is, I don't know, I hope everyone's going out into the streets today, if that's safe for you. Yeah, big day. And I'm just feeling really strongly about it and just can't not talk about it everywhere. But yeah, I'm going to be going out next here in Jersey City. And good luck to everybody. I hope you're safe. And yeah, I will see you next week. Cool. Yeah, there's Discord link down below if you want to be in a conversation about this stuff. And I appreciate seeing all of you. What's up, Gabe, Gabriella, Pat, QBRD, Maddie. I really appreciate all of you. Okay, take care. Bye.